Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of PHT TV. Today we're going to be checking out the Acoustic Energy AE320 and the AE520 towers and looking at them side by side. I wanted to shoot the towers in one episode to check out some of the similarities and some of the differences. If you haven't seen it yet, check out our AE300 video from last week where we cover the bookshelves in this series. And also, if you haven't seen it yet, check out our Zoom call from a couple weeks back where we chatted with Fidelity Imports' Eric Smith. He gives us some insight on Acoustic Energy before we dive in. As I mentioned in the intro a couple weeks back and in the 300 video and probably some other times as well, many of the items we will be covering, I'll be right there with you guys, seeing them for the first time, hearing them for the very first time. As always, I have to mention, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button below. This will keep you up to date on new videos as they release. We're going on strong now to over 6,000 subscribers, and we want to keep that number climbing. So like and subscribe and tell your friends. Now, without further delay, let's get moving and get these guys out of the box. Now, while I pull this out, let's talk about some of those quick specs. First off, the woofers are 130mm ceramic aluminum sandwich cone. The tweeters are 28mm domes. The bandwidth is from 35 Hz to 30 kHz. Sensitivity 90 dB. Peak SPL 116 dB. Power handling 200 watts. The crossover frequencies are 380 Hz and 3.4 kHz. Dimensions are 1000 by 175 by 320, which is 39.37 by 6.88 by 12.59, and they weigh 26 kilograms each. Now, as for the 520, the woofers are 125mm carbon fiber cones. The tweeters are 25mm carbon fiber domes. Bandwidth is from 30 Hz to 28 kHz. Sensitivity is at 90 dB. Peak SPL is 113 dB. Power handling is 300 watts. The crossover frequencies are 373 Hz and 2.8 kHz. Dimensions are 1130 by 185 by 320, which is 44.48 by 7.28 by 12.59. The weight is 30 kilograms. Before we go into anything else, I did want to dive into this setup information guide. This is the most basic of basic, like how-to on setting up your speakers, just connecting to the amplifier there and a wiring diagram of positive to positive and negative to negative. Then next, we're going to have the Acoustic Energy sheet here. This one is specific to the 500 series. This one's going to go a little bit more in depth. So we do have the connection guide similar to that in the 300 series. But this one also dives into positioning and kind of helps you set up the speakers all together. Get rid of this real quick. In the 300 series, the spike feet are included. They are in the bottom of the foam. Now, on the 500 series, you actually have a separate accessories box here, which includes your outrigger feet as well as your spikes. You see, these are some intense spike feet here. So I'm not going to install these just yet. I'm going to put them back in the box here. All right, so here we have the 320s and the 520 series. Here is your 320s. Get this piece off the grill as well. And then here are your 520s. Again, I'll get this piece off the grill here. All right, I'm going to turn one around to the back here on each. And then let's get these grills off. All right, so one thing that I will note is we are going to get those spikes on both of these guys before we get to the listening and before we move them around too much, because as you can see, they're not exactly the most stable, but that's because this isn't how they are designed to sit. They're designed to sit on top of those outriggers and the spiked feet. So we're going to get those guys on before we start listening, but I wanted to dive into the information portion of this before we did that. First off, let's talk about the similarities. Both are going to be three-way designs. Both have the same finish options available, which are a piano white gloss finish, which we don't have here, but then we also have the black piano gloss finish as well as the American walnut finish. You can also see that they share a lot of the same design elements cosmetically. Now let's highlight some of the differences. The 320 uses aluminum drivers, while the 520 uses carbon fiber. Just looking at them, you can kind of see it, the carbon fiber kind of jumps out at you there. The bandwidth on the 320 is 35 to 30, whereas the 520 digs a bit deeper, going from 30 to 28. The power handling is 200 watts versus 300 watts. The crossover points are going to be at 380 and 3.4 kHz on the 320s, and 373 and 2.8 kHz on the 520s. As for physical form, the 520 is wider and taller, but has the same depth and comes in at 4 kilograms or almost 9 pounds heavier than the 320s. Now, as for the mention of both being three-way, let's discuss that for a minute, as it is handled completely differently between the two speakers. As for the 320, it does have a dedicated mid-range and it is rear ported. The 520 does, however, just take this to the next level. The two mid-range drivers are actually mounted in their own dedicated sealed enclosure. The three remaining drivers are dedicated low-frequency drivers, reflex loaded with a rear port as well. As for the cabinets themselves, there is a pretty big step up here as well between the two models. The 320 uses a high-density MDF with cabinet bracing to reduce coloration. The 520 takes this even further using RSC, or Resonance Suppression Composite. And essentially what that is it's like sandwiching Dynamat between the two layers of wood. If you don't know what Dynamat is, basically it's like taking a sandwich where the MDF is the buns and there is a layer of rubber as your meat. So that goes all the way around the cabinet. That's about all I'm going to cover here. If you haven't already, click that like button, click that subscribe button. Stay up to date on these new releases as they come. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again next week for another brand new episode of PHT TV.